The character of Tony Manero was played by an actor named John Travolta.
When I first met John, he said, listen, I already know how to dance. He was doing the Barbarino. I wanted him to be Valentino, not Barbarino. So when I started teaching him some of the moves, I used to take him out to the clubs. Pretty soon, he was getting so good, women would line up just to dance with him. And they'd all giggle at the table, and he'd be doing the turn and shaking the hips. John kept falling into this rhythm where he'd point up and down and shake the hips. I said, you know, John, it's wrong, but it looks good on you.
John Travolta was a white boy that could dance. I said, hallelujah, there's hope after all.
That made John Travolta a huge star.
He made polyester famous.
Everyone loved their polyester, their three-piece suits. The hair was a major thing back then.
We just washed the hair.
You had to put enough hairspray in there, so when you'd walk into a club, it was the same way when you left.
I work on my hair a long time, and you hit it. He hits my hair.
I used to think of myself as someone who's sort of nerdy and lame or not cool. So when I saw Saturday Night Fever and I saw that a guy could work in a hardware store carrying paint down the street by day, and at night he could dress up and be cool and dance to this sexy music, I thought, I think I could do that.
Saturday Night Fever was a hit because of the music.
The music was incredible.
The Bee Gees had numerous hits from the movies.
The Bee Gees, oh, I love the Bee Gees.
Saturday Night Fever was one of the best records ever.
I didn't know anybody that didn't have one.
Saturday Night Fever brought disco across the United States.
We knew that there was something really huge in our world that we could tap into.
That's when disco went mainstream.
It was such a strong cult thing that it just changed everybody. Swept over the world. Fashions, music, nightclubs, everything.
It took everybody by storm.
People were opening up clubs left and right and center.
There was so many clubs back then.
The biggest club by far, bar none, was Studio 54.
Studio 54, which was totally incredible, totally insane.
I did go to Studio 54. I don't remember much.
Studio 54 opened in New York, May of 1977, and skyrocketed immediately with the tremendous success of Saturday Night Fever.
This was the former TV studio on 54th Street, which Steve Rubell and Ian Schrager transformed into the hot club du jour.
At Studio 54, you had the great designer Halston, who was there every night, and Liza Minnelli, and all of the great celebrities would be there.
People like Andy Warhol and Truman Capote and Francesco Scavulo.
Grace Jones, Cher would be there. Frank Sinatra would come to the club.
Woody Allen with Michael Jackson. God knows what they were talking about.
You'd see a lot of people, and a lot of people would see you.
Bianca was like a fanatic. She just lived in the club.
Bianca Jagger's birthday was fantastic. Unfortunately, I had to pop out of the cake.
We brought this white horse with Lady Godiva on it. And at one point, Bianca decided to jump on top of the horse around the dance floor.
And then all of a sudden, from nowhere, 45 photographers.
Studio 54 was like a fancy man, just took you out, took you to another place.
I sort of vaguely remember being on the bottom of a pile of bodies one night. I remember looking up and seeing Liza Minnelli over there and where am I? What am I doing?
I was hanging out with Michael Jackson, and he turned to me and he said, "Where am I?"
It was a really, really wild scene.
I came there one night. The doorman came over and said, "Miss Gaynor, you don't want to come in here tonight." And we got back into the car and drove away. I don't know what was going on in there, but apparently he didn't think that it was something that I would be pleased with.
The amount of sex that took place at Studio 54 was absolutely unbelievable.
I mean, if you really want to be candid, I mean, I've seen people get upstairs right there, live and in color.
300 people having sex up in the balcony.
It was before AIDS, and nobody was concerned about having casual sex and dying.
The busboys at Studio 54 were half naked and walked around in little satin shorts.
Stevie Rubell was running around with a stack of Polaroids of every single busboy and bartender masturbating to show the size of the genitals to Halston and the other gay celebrities and saying, "Which one do you want tonight?"
The whole club was built around sex and drugs.
In the basement, it was kind of Steve Rubell's secret VIP room for celebrities where they did drugs.
It was just a den of iniquity down there. All they did was each other and do drugs.
Marijuana, quaaludes.
A lot of hallucinogens.
Poppers were involved.
I remember being out on the floor one night dancing. Some kid went by me and popped a popper in my nose, and I went, "Ugh."
Cocaine had a major part in Studio 54.
Oh, definitely the white lady.
Cocaine was fashionable, and they didn't think it was addictive.
The free sex, the free drugs, that was the draw of the club.
I think the most important element to the success of a place like Studio 54 was how they picked people to go in.
Not everybody could get into that club.
Studio 54 had a velvet rope. They picked people out from behind the rope, and if they didn't like the people, they wouldn't choose them.
And they would select the beautiful people, and the rest were out left screaming in the street.
They would look at you, and it was almost like, no, we have one of those. Thank you very much. Next.
The whole idea of the success was the element of the crowd and the mix, kind of like a tossed salad, Steve Rubell used to call it.
There were nights when I tried to get in and couldn't for some odd reason, and I was ruined. I was this close to suicide.
There was a definite effort by people like Stevie Rubell to put the individual down. They often had me turn away the celebrities. I can remember turning away Warren Beatty.
I remember once I tried to get into Studio 54 and they wouldn't let me in. But I'm Carolyn Corney from Saturday Night Fever. And they just didn't know you're not.
Grace Jones invited us to Studio 54. They didn't let us in.
Nile starts, screaming all sorts of obscenities and stomps off into the night.
So we went to my apartment, which was around the corner, and we started jamming on this little riff. And it was like, great. Now we got to make this song called Off and try and get it on the radio.
So instead of saying off, he says freak out. And it became like a monster hit.
I was able to get in, but I really resented the fact that there were so many people that were not able to get in. It's like, well, how are you deciding? They're going by how you look. Okay, well, you're too short, you're too tall, you're too black, you're too light. Personally, I had a problem with that.
That wasn't right. That was like taking a step backwards.
Stevie Rubell would say to the girl, right in the middle of the winter, you take off your shirt and you stand here without your shirt for half an hour. I'm going to let you in. And the girl would immediately strip. Stevie would just be giggling. And, she had to go to the hospital. She had frostbitten nipples.
People would sneak in, but it was difficult. They'd go to all lengths.
There was a guy that had gotten stuck in the grate, and he had tried to come through from the building next door and got stuck. And he died.
Everybody jumps on the disco bandwagon.
They're discoing up everything. From Burger King ads.
Let's disco to Burger King.
To car ads.
Now walk the streets.
Studio 54.
When that song would come on, you would see women out there, 6, 7, 8 of them dancing together, mouthing the words and singing.
The response was phenomenal.
I think a lot of people identified with that feeling. They were hurt by someone.
This was something that really gave them a chance to express themselves even more than ever.
I was one of the few artists that would perform on the catwalk as it moved out across the audience. It was almost like the queen above her subjects, just loving them and having them love her.
Too much of anything is, bad.
After a while, disco was everywhere. It was too omnipresent.
It just crisscrossed all over the country.
I worked at a club in Buffalo called the Club 747. It was the inside of a 747 jumbo jet. They used the interior, from the windows to the seats. People from all over the world came to that nightclub when they went to Buffalo or when they came to see Niagara Falls.
Things started to get more, in some ways, commercial.
I really think that probably had as much of a negative effect on the movement as a positive effect.
They're discoing up everything. From Burger King ads.
Let's disco to Burger King.
To car ads.
You hear it in the bank. You hear it at the airport.
You couldn't find a television show that wasn't talking about disco. Disco Step by Step was the first television show that actually was dedicated to disco music, dance instruction, and hustle dancing. Grandmothers, grandfathers, the mothers and fathers, the aunts and uncles would tune in. Even the little kids liked it.
Every week you tuned in to Dance Fever with Denny Terrio.
I said, you know, Merv, I said, we ought to have a dance contest. He thought about it for a minute. He goes,
why don't I take my show and one night have America's first disco contest with contestants? And we'll give him a prize.
He called me the next day, and it was the highest ratings he had had in 13 years on television.
It was absolutely amazing. So I said, let's do this as a weekly show. And thus was born Dance Fever.
I remember one show that this girl had a pair of pantyhose on with nothing on under it and did a split. You know, and we were all in the room going, oh, my gosh.
Dance Fever caught on because it really was the public dancing.
It had this wonderful feeling of 15 minutes of fame.
What we decided to do, rather than having a show where everybody is just dancing to a record, we filled our show with guest stars. We called it Disco Magic. We wanted Vicki Sue Robinson. She had the biggest hit in the country, Turn the Beat Around.
Turn the beat around. Love to hear her gotcha.
And RCA Records said, I'll tell you what, we'll give you Vicki Sue, but we got this new up-and-coming group called Village People. And nobody had heard of them yet. We were the first show to ever put them on television. And that was pretty exciting.